Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, brought to you by Modern Well, a beautiful woman-centered collaborative workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm your host, April Seifert, psychologist, entrepreneur, and self-proclaimed life experience junkie. Each week, I will introduce you to a different woman who is succeeding and inspiring others in one way or another. We'll dive into her story, her successes, failures, and the lessons she has learned along the way, all with the goal of inspiring you to listen to that inner voice who keeps reminding you that there is something you want to take action on. You are so much more capable and powerful than you give yourself credit for. Inside of you is a woman on fire. Let's let her out and see what happens. Here we go. Friends, welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name is April Seifert, and I am your host. And today's episode is another special mini episode of the Women Inspired Podcast, and I am focusing on fear. Now, I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb when I say that absolutely nothing holds people back from being the person they want to be, doing the things they want to do, and living the life they want to live more than fear. Fear makes us conform. Fear makes us stay small and quiet and complacent. And fear keeps us inside our comfort zones. And you know how passionate I am about getting people outside of their comfort zones. Fear leads us to live sheltered half lives that aren't nearly as big and bold and vibrant and aligned and authentic and joyful as they possibly could be. And because of that, I am tackling it head on today. Now, just for a second, permit me to digress, because if you caught episode number 39 and number 40 of the podcast where I told my own life story, you know that I'm incredibly passionate about living life to the fullest. Now, the bottom line of those episodes was that each of us is given one single life. Just one. You're going to get the one that you're living now. You get one and only one shot to live on this planet. And for most of us, I hate to break it to you, but that shot is going to feel too short. And worse off, if you're an adult and you're listening to this, a big chunk of your life is already over, and you're not getting that back. Your life is finite, precious, and the most incredible gift. And someday it's going to be over. And that's the case for all of us. And I don't want that to bum you out. That shouldn't be something that makes you depressed. If anything, that should be something that makes you feel empowered to live unlicensed. So what does all that have to do with fear? Here's the thing. If you've been given one and only one short life, one finite life to live, you owe it to yourself to make the most of that incredible life. Make it the best life possible. And if fear is the thing that's holding you back from doing that, you absolutely have to find a way to move past that fear. You have to. Your life literally depends on you being able to move past fear and really experience all that life has to offer before it's too late. I can't even begin to count the number of people I encounter on a daily basis. This is people who I encounter in day-to-day life, people who message me on social media, people who message me through my website, people who tell me that they have a big goal or a big dream or a desire, but they're too afraid to go after it. Half the time, they're too afraid to even begin. And if you're one of those people, hear this. At best, you are living a half-life. You're squandering the most incredible gift any of us has ever been given, because time is the most non-renewable resource on the planet, and you are wasting it if you are sitting still because of fear. Now, the thing is, fear is inevitable. We're all going to experience it. But it's critical that we learn techniques to help us move past it. It is your birthright to have the biggest, boldest, most full, vibrant, and joyful life possible. And if you're letting fear hold you back from that life, I want you to listen very carefully to the rest of this episode, because it literally could change your life. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but nobody's immune to being afraid. Given the work that I'm doing these days and given the stage that my life is at, honestly, I'm not kidding when I say I'm afraid of most of the things that I do on a daily basis. But you know what's scarier to me than doing things that I'm afraid of? It's scarier to me to look back on my life one day and look back on it with regret. Looking back and knowing that it's impossible to turn back the clock and you're not going to get a do-over. That's the scariest thing in the world for me. So, in spite of the fact that I am freaked out most of the time, I want to move forward. I want to chase my goals, even if there's a chance that I might fail. And I want to help you do the same. So, today, in this mini episode, I want to talk to you about 3 techniques that you can use, 3 techniques that I use all the time to move past fear and live the life you truly want to live. Chase those big goals and go after your big dreams. Now, each technique is a little bit different. It's helpful in different circumstances. So hopefully by covering all 3 of them today and by understanding how all 3 of them work, you're going to have a few tools at your disposal to help you move past your own fears and start living your own big, bad, bold, vibrant, aligned life. All right, so let's dig in. Technique number 1. It's something that I like to call rip the Band-Aid, otherwise known as the launch sequence. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. Have you ever noticed that things that seem scary turn into even bigger and bigger deals the longer you sit and think about them? So like you get this idea in your mind, and the longer you sit and think about it, the scarier it becomes. Your brain has actually evolved to anticipate and avoid threats in the world. So back in the day when we were, afraid of saber-toothed tigers and the world was actually a really lethally scary place, that's how our brain began to evolve to help us stay alive and avoid threats in the world. So really, when you sit and think about something that scares you, your brain is just doing its job. If given enough time, your mind can manufacture what feels like life-threatening circumstances, even if the thing that you're afraid of isn't actually that big of a deal. So for example, imagine you're at a networking event and you spot a really prominent person in your field standing across the room from you. You would love to introduce yourself, but fear and self-doubt immediately creep in and you hesitate for a second. And the longer you stand there, the more you start to convince yourself that you'd actually be bothering that person if you came up and introduced yourself. That maybe you'd probably stumble on your words and that you'd come off sounding ignorant or needy or like you're trying to get something from that person. And the longer and longer you hesitate and the longer you stand there, the more you talk yourself out of introducing yourself to that person to the point where most of the time you don't ever act. Now, the first technique I regularly employ, this is all the dang time. The first technique that I want to talk to you about is to rip that Band-Aid and act before your brain has a chance to kick in and before your brain has a chance to ruin it for you. You may have heard of Mel Robbins. She actually has a similar technique, and I love the way she describes it. She talks about it as resembling a NASA launch sequence, like shooting rockets to the moon, that type of launch sequence. So as soon as she realizes that there's something she wants to do, she counts down from 5, like space shuttle style, and forces herself to act when she hits 1. The goal is to get moving, get your body physically moving, and start before your brain has a chance to blow things out of proportion. So next time, try it. Try this technique. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off, start, move before your brain has a chance to kick in. All right, so that was technique number 1. Technique number 2 is something that I like to call the pause button. Some of you might know that I'm a licensed skydiver. I'm actually relatively new to my skydive career, but at this point, I've jumped out of a perfectly good airplane a few dozen times. And you want to know a little secret? I have to talk myself into doing it every single time. Even though I know skydiving is insanely fun, it's also terrifying. To people who have been in the field, who have thousands and thousands of jumps, they will say the same thing. You're nearly paralyzed with fear every single time you're going to jump. That fear, it doesn't go away. There's one technique that helps me move forward and jump again anyway, even though I'm desperately afraid, and I like to call it the pause button. So When I feel that fear start to creep in, I know it's going to happen every single time. So when I start to feel it, here's the conversation I have with myself. Okay, April, I know you're afraid. That's okay. Let's acknowledge that. We're freaked out, and that is totally fine. In fact, that probably means you're taking this seriously, which is a good thing. Skydiving is not something you should take lightly. So good for you. I'm glad you're a little afraid. You're taking it seriously. But just for 1 second, let's hit the pause button on that fear. If you somehow didn't have to be afraid, let's say you could just set that fear aside, what would be the next emotion that you would feel? In other words, what emotion or emotions are just on the other side of that fear? What if you gave yourself permission to just temporarily, you're not ignoring that it's there, you're just saying just for a second, hit the pause button on the fear you're feeling and let those secondary and tertiary emotions bubble to the surface. What do those feel like? Let yourself marinate in that. It's amazing how courageous you end up feeling. So for me, if I hit the pause button on fear when I'm about ready to skydive, I remember how elated and how present and mindful and free and in control I'm about to feel if I go jump out of that plane. If I hit that pause button, on the other side of fear are incredibly positive emotions. Incredibly positive emotions. But remember, your brain is wired and has evolved to find fearful, scary, threatening things. So immediately at the outset, we're in an imbalanced mindset. Fear is the only thing you can see. But if you can hit that pause button and you can allow some of those secondary emotions to come in, which are just as valid as the fear, right? We're not saying one is more important than the other. We're saying, hey, both are valid. You can immediately start to balance out your mind so that the fear is there, you're acknowledging it, but you're not letting it paralyze you from acting. So if you could hit the pause button on your fear for 1 moment, what emotions would bubble up around that goal that you have or that thing you want to try? Marinate in those emotions for a moment and see if they help balance out your fear. Okay, so that was technique number 2, the pause button. Last, I want to talk about technique number 3, which is call in the tribe. This last technique is probably the single most effective way I've ever found to help me move past fear and strive for my biggest goals. I'm talking, these are the ones where I'm like, there's no chance. This feels like an impossibility. People like me don't do things like this. When I start to feel like that, that's when I know I need to call in my tribe. So let's dive into this one a little bit more. How many times have you ever had a big idea or a big goal, but you knew maybe you lacked some kind of knowledge or skills? There's no question about it. You just didn't know how to do a big chunk of some of the work that it's going to take to achieve that goal. I hear this all the time. When people reach out to me, they say, you know what, April, I'd love to start my own business, but I don't know how to build a website, or I don't know how to set up a business. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't think I have the right degree. People aren't going to take me seriously, etc., etc., etc. All they're telling me is that they have a gap in their knowledge or skills. Now listen to me when I say this. No single person, not one, zero, has all the skills and knowledge they need to achieve their biggest goals. It's not possible. You're one person. That's why calling in a tribe is so important. You surround yourself with people whose skill sets and superpowers complement your own so that together you can move the needle further than any one of you could by yourself. You have skills that they have skills that you need, and when you put them together, it is like the Transformers Optimus Prime, magic group of people who can seriously achieve some goals together that they couldn't do on their own. And additionally, can we just all admit for a second that all of us lack confidence from time to time? I mean, I'm going to raise my hand right now. Honk your horn or raise your hand if this is the case for you. How many times have you felt like, oh my God, people like me don't do things like this? How many times have you asked yourself, why in the heck should people listen to me or take me seriously? And how many times have you felt like other people are more established or more credible than I am and that I'm lacking in some way? This is another reason to get a tribe around you. The second you feel like that, get your tribe around you. Your tribe can lend you confidence and belief when you are not in a place to be able to manufacture that your own. There's more power and more value in that than I can even express. So many times I have moved forward using confidence that was lent to me by other people because I couldn't get it myself. Now, to that end, I have to plug this. I have to share one opportunity that's coming up that I have already personally taken advantage of. A recent guest of mine, Yasna Burza, she was episode number 75, if you want to check her out. Even aside from this, dude, check her episode out. It is so good. It's so good. Oh my God, it's so good. She is currently taking applications for her fall 2018 installment of her Minneapolis Mastermind. Now, this is something that's only available to people who are in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area for the time being. She might change that in the future, but for right now, it's available to us in this area. And when I heard she had another session of it coming up, I jumped on the chance to be part of it. All I have heard from people who have participated in her mastermind in the past is how transformative and magical that experience has been. So it's a 4-month mastermind. You meet for big sessions each month, and you can also include some personal coaching with Yasna as part of that mastermind. That's what I chose to do. So I'm actually going to do the mastermind, and I'm actually going to do some personal coaching with Yasna over the next 4 months because there are some seriously big, scary goals that I have for myself on this side of my business that honestly, all the things that I just said, I don't have the confidence that I need to be able to do it myself. I don't. I can't drum it up. I need to borrow it from someone else. And there's a ton of areas where I'm just lacking skills. I just flat out don't know how to do some of this stuff. And I need somebody to help show me how to do it. And I also, just frankly, I have skills that I think I could lend to other women in order to make a contribution. And that just feels good. It feels great to get into a group of people like that and give and take and watch magic happen. Now, I absolutely can't wait to be part of this group of women, and I would love to have you be part of it as well. So if you're at all interested, shoot me a message on social media or through my website, and I would love to get you in contact with Yasna so that you could see if this amazing group would be something that would be right for you. Okay, friends, I hope this episode was helpful. I wanted to give you 3 techniques that you could use to move past fear. And I really, really hope you found at least one of them to be something that resonates with you right now to help you move the needle today. Remember, you're only getting one life. Fear leads us to live sheltered half-lives that aren't nearly as big and bold and vibrant and authentic and joyful as they could be. I sincerely hope today's episode gave you some techniques that you can use when you need to, move past your own fear, when that fear bubbles up and threatens to hold you in your comfort zone. You are so much more powerful than that. So acknowledge that the fear is there. It is. It's inevitable. It's not going away. But acknowledge it and then try one of these techniques and move forward. I know you can do it. And I want you to know that I'm over here and I'm betting on you. I know you can do it. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love.
Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.